Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. We have plenty of stuff to tackle this evening, so let's get right into it. There was a New York Times article released this afternoon, which we only got just a brief little bit of heads up on. I actually received a call from a friend of mine in kind of the media sphere who let me know that this was coming. It is a New York Times article, and I'll read you the headline of the New York Times article. It's really embarrassing. It is nevertheless a very important story. It says, quote, a Times exclusive. Several women who dated Graham Platner recall unsettling behavior. The subheadline is, the Democratic candidate for Senate in Maine could be charming, women said in interviews, but some found his actions intimidating and disturbing. That is according to the New York Times' Katie Gluick and Lisa Learer. Now, that may not initially sound too bad. After all, it just kind of sounds, well, I mean, hey, you know, he was maybe not like a really friendly dude. What actually is in the details of this article is deeply troubling, and if all of the rest of the Senate Democrat candidate's history wasn't enough to disqualify him, this alone should be the final tipping point. And according to a couple of emails that I have access to from inside the Democratic National Committee, both Monday and then yesterday, Wednesday, today, June the 4th, there's very good reason for a lot of panic on the inside of the Democratic Party because of some of these details. Now, Matt Vespa at townhall.com has a far better breakdown of the things that Graham Platner is accused of. I will break this down here with you because, again, I think it's very, very important. So first of all, my friend in this story, just for transparency's sake, is Lindsay Fifield. So Lindsay Fifield and I have known each other for a long time, since I was at Chalkboard Review running that. She and I were good friends in kind of the media and pro-parents' rights space. But back in 2013, she dated Graham Platner. They say, quote, when Miss Fifield first met Mr. Platner in 2013, he was a student at George Washington University, and she was working on veterans issues at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and beginning to make a name for herself as a conservative activist online. Their roughly 2-year on-again, off-again relationship, as Miss Fifield described it, was heady and passionate. Now, when you get past this into what actually occurred, according to the article, this isn't just an unsettling or intimidating relationship. What the New York Times details is downright, unequivocally, definitively domestic abuse, including but not limited to kidnapping, assault, battery. He glorifies violence, suggests that if anyone ever broke into the house that he would enjoy raping them, but not in a gay way, whatever that means. And, oh, of course, we're going to get to this. He knew ages ago that the totem cough tattoo that he got when he was in the Marines in Eastern Europe, he knew it was a Nazi tattoo. He knew that clearly, and that's going to matter because he said, the exact opposite on a lot of interviews. So let's get into some of the details here. Said, quote, Mr. Platner could be rough with her, Miss Fifield said, particularly when they were drinking, leaving her shaken and sometimes afraid. In the interviews, Miss Fifield grappled with how to process her experiences. By the way, what that means is that she was re-experiencing trauma. And that is a damn shame for the New York Times to say, well, she was struggling with how to phrase it. She's reliving abusive trauma. You soulless, heartless harpies who wrote this article. But anyway, having to include these details, quote, she was quick to note that he, quote, never hit me, he never punched me, but she said he regularly grabbed her by the shoulders, sometimes hard enough to leave marks, and on one occasion, yanked her out of a cab by her wrist after an argument when she wanted to stay in the car. That is the legal definition of assault, by the way. During one argument, she recalled, he twisted her arm behind her back, shoved her into a bedroom, and held the door closed from the other side so she couldn't get out, telling her to remain there until she was, quote, calm, end quote. That would be kidnapping. Eventually, Miss Fifield said, she fell asleep and left the next morning. Quote, it hurt, she said, but she added, it didn't cause an injury and it didn't break my arm. As a reminder, that's not the legal standard for abuse, whether or not it leaves a mark or it breaks your arm. Grabbing someone violently is just as much a form of assault and battery as striking an individual with or without an object. This isn't difficult. And it is shameful. The New York Times, again, Matt Vespa over at townhall.com does a far better job of explaining some of these details. So I highly recommend you go over there and take a look at it. Larry O'Connor's doing excellent work over there on that site as well. Also from the Times, quote here, Ms. Fifield also recalled that Mr. Platner's displays of weaponry and discussions of violence sometimes left her uneasy. She said he kept an AR-15 lying around his apartment on Capitol Hill and would sharpen an axe, a relic from his time working the Appalachian Trail before he enlisted in the Marines, while watching television. So to be clear, as one of the guys over at Ruthless, the Ruthless podcast makes the point, made it before I came to the conclusion, Josh Holmes, the casual Washington, D.C. gun possession crime, just floating in the middle of the article, is just chef's kiss. Can you imagine if a Republican or a conservative up for, let's say, the Supreme Court nomination had any of these details in this past? This wouldn't be buried under 22 paragraphs in the New York Times. Anywho, he had what she described as a warrior ethos and would fantasize about killing people he deemed a threat. She said that he told her rape was about power. Quote, he said this a lot. If anybody ever broke in here, I would rape them, end quote, she recalled, saying that he added that it would not be in a sexual way, not in a gay way. He was like, I would rape them to show them that I'm dominant, she said. Dear God. The Senate Democrat candidate for the state of Maine, by the way, who, by the way, again, let's get the other side in here because the New York Times reached out, asked about those remarks. A Platner campaign official did not dispute them. A friend who knew Mr. Platner and Miss Fifield during that period said the comments sounded out of character. Nope. Not at all. Not at all. Based on conversations that I have had with other individuals who are contemporaries of both mine and Lindsay's, doesn't sound out of character regarding Graham at all, especially if, by the way, he got a totem cough tattoo and fetishized openly on Reddit forums about doing the same kinds of stuff. You can't say, it sounds really out of character. Yeah, I mean, it's just corroborated in his social media history, bizarre comments that he's made for over a decade. Rather strange. Mr. Platner, who had overlapping relationships with other women while he and Miss Fifield dated, also referred to women as, quote, hatchet wounds. Just really bizarre, wild stuff. Now, there are a couple of other details here. Jerry Dunleavy points this out, and again, I'm trying to cite the others who've read through the article and reached these conclusions before I did. Multiple sections of the article point out that all of his exes knew he had a Nazi tattoo. He called it, quote, my totem cough. Yet he kept it for years and lied about it when it became a political liability. Now that's rather strange because, go figure, he then later came out and said, both to Pod Save America, I had no idea it was a Nazi tattoo. I had no idea. It was Oppo research. I didn't know this was a Nazi SS tattoo.
At no point in this entire experience of my life did anybody ever once say, hey, you're a Nazi.
No, he just told people in his life that very thing. No one maybe called me that. I said, hey, look, this is my totem cough. This is my SS, my Nazi tattoo. Like you do.
It never came up until we got wind that in the opposition research, somebody was shopping the idea that I was a secret Nazi with a hidden Nazi tattoo. And I can honestly say that if I was trying to hide it, I've not been doing a very good job for the past 18 years.
He tried the same thing with Lulu over at the New York Times. Here's that clip.
I want to come back to something that we mentioned at the top, which is something else that happened during your time in the Middle East. And that is, of course, that you got a tattoo.
Well, that was in Croatia.
That was in Croatia, but it was during this period then when you were serving.
2007.
Right.
Or 8.
And it resembles Nazi insignia.
Yeah, it's a skull and crossbones.
It's not a skull and crossbones. He has been on the record for ages saying it's a totem cough. It's not just a skull and crossbones. Get out of here with that garbage. Dude's a bad liar. But again, all of these things, all of this, despite the domestic abuse scandals, which should enough be alone. Again, remember, we just got done with Eric Swalwell. We just got done with all of these other cases of fraud of sitting Democrats in Congress. Now here we have Democrats going up against Susan Collins, who is not the most beloved Republican in the country and should not be the easiest, should not be the most difficult candidate in history to take down. And yet now they have, and they are still doubling down on a man who would shove women into a room and allegedly hold the door and not let them leave. Casual domestic abuse stuff. This is their guy. Believe all women party. This is their dude. And I'm going to show you in a second. They're not backing down from him at all. In fact, they're mocking the victims of domestic abuse because when Democrats do it, it's parenthesis D, different. Radio crew will send you to the commercial. Continue over on the live stream, the Daily Signal. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We'll catch radio crew back in a minute. All right, well, that fine crew goes through their lovely commercial break. Bernie Sanders, the socialism, he's so proud of Graham Platner because he embodies the revolution, and he's an oyster farmer or something. I got to love him. He doesn't look like AOC, but he has the heart. So Bernie Sanders, he's already coming out and saying that, hey, this isn't going to change it. He's still with Graham. You know, Platner's his little boy. Here we go.
So I think maybe we should be focusing on the important issues facing working people throughout this country.
You know what a lot of working women have had to deal with in this country? Domestic abuse. That's a real issue.
Not focusing on his marriage. And my understanding is that his wife, Amy, who I've met, indicated they love each other. But maybe we focus on the issues facing the American people, the people of Maine, and not the marriage issues facing Graham Platner.
But no, to be clear, before we get to him saying he's still totally fine with him, the last scandal that we didn't even get done with here with Graham is that he had a picture of himself in just a towel on the messaging service Kik that all different kinds of media outlets, from the left, right, center, international, cite to be a haven for predators and pedophiles, where minors are messaged by older men all the ding-dong damn day. That Graham Platner, after he was married, which, by the way, if you're on Kik at all as an adult man, your hard drive should be searched. But I'm sorry, it doesn't matter how much my wonderful wife loves me. If you find me messaging minors, I shouldn't be in public office. This isn't difficult.
Sending sexually explicit messages, does that make you, is that the right person for office? Are you at all rethinking your endorsement?
Oh, certainly.
Certainly not.
Oh, certainly not. Oh, no. I mean, sure. Maybe he gets out there and says, maybe I'm gonna get a little raping in there and, domestically abuse women that I've been with. And then once I'm married, I'm going to chat with maybe underage women. I mean, just wild stuff. Apparently at 8 p.m. this evening, it is Thursday, June the 4th at 7:19 as I'm saying this. But apparently he's going on a major interview over on MS Now this evening. So I'm looking forward to hearing what it is that he has to say. Because again, Chuck Schumer, other Democrats, they're all in at this point. Now, inside the party, there is abject panic. I'll explain that in a second. I have access to a couple of emails this week that do not show the calm, smarmy, waddlesome face of Chuckles Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader.
You have not said if you're still endorsing Graham Platner. Are you still supporting Graham Platner?
As I said, I endorsed Graham Platner. We're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate. Thank you.
Do you have any concerns about this?
Again, a rather strange thing, a rather strange way to frame it, to put it up there. Now, on the other side, I should point out also, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, the DSCC, the Democrat Senate election chairwoman here, if she still backs Graham Platner after the New York Times report. So this is fresh. This is this afternoon at 5:16 p.m. Now she's saying, quote, we're still doing Maine. That's it. Just we're still doing Maine, or whatever that's supposed to mean. Very, very bizarre stuff. That brings us over to the media chunk. Before we're done on this story and we move on, I should also point out Fetterman, Democrat over at Pennsylvania, recognizing that this is a sinking ship, that this is about to become an Unterseeboot. Here was his take on it. Just calls him a creep. Pretty apropos.
Are you concerned that there's more to drop?
Well, he lied to everybody. He said that there wasn't any after his Nazi tattoo situation. And now there's more and more of the things. So he's already lied about that. So I assume, it's like they say, for every ranch you see in Texas, there's 50 that you haven't seen.
No, that's pretty on point. Not wrong. Absolutely. The media side on this is really gross, but we're going to have to bring in the radio crew in from commercial. And then we have other news to talk about. We've got some major Treasury and fraud investigation news. Of course, John Bolton pleading guilty on a charge of classified document handling. A lot to talk about tonight. Do not go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
The complete and utter panic gets a lot spicier over on the DOJ and the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent fighting with Congress as well. You can start to see a lot of campaign style nervousness, because while the generic congressional ballot isn't really looking super duper for Republicans, it's not at all where things need to be for the Democrats. And there are some good reasons as to why. One reason is that Democrats have gone all in on performative circus nonsense. And we'll get to some of that, I promise. There's more than enough to go around, especially since being out sick yesterday, I didn't get to cover, the ESPN 8, the Ocho style fights in committees with Rubio. But before we get to that, some stuff that is of substance to you. The Department of Justice, under who will soon be Attorney General Todd Blanche, currently acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, Trump has now announced that Blanche is going to be the guy he puts forward for the nomination. Now, there are all these questions as to whether Tom Tillis of North Carolina, Republican, is going to vote in favor of Blanche. Blanche is going to make it through. And there are two reasons why. One of them is the common sense, every American understands this reason. And then the other is the very high-minded, super nerd, academic of mystery answer. So the common sense answer that you and I understand as to why Blanche is going to make it through, he's normal. He gets up in front of the American people and he acts, you guessed it, Bill, normally. When he gets up in front of a press conference, when he steps in front of the American people and makes some kind of an announcement, whether it's about investigating fraud, whether it's about federal law enforcement moving towards a major decrease in the national murder rate, as we've seen, the man acts like a normal, non-performative human being, Exhibit A.
Violent crime reduction remains one of the department's highest priorities since January 20th, 2025.
Do you see anything there so far? Again, we're only a sentence in, that sounds as though this is a crazy, wacko, out there, performative individual. Instagram videos from the podium. Nope. He is what you would expect to see piloting an American Airlines flight to your favorite local city dumpster fire. Calm, no matter what the weather is, he's giving you the details, and unlike a lot of previous attorneys general, we're going to get to this in a second here with the arrest of an American citizen defecting to the People's Republic of China, foreign agent stuff, the DOJ is actually doing some things. I know, I'm as surprised as you are.
The Department of Justice has indicted more than 260 TDA members, crippling leadership and dismantling operational networks. Across our major law enforcement components, the results have been historic. Federal law enforcement helped drive a 20% decrease in the national murder rate in 2025, arrested 44,000 violent offenders, which is double the previous year.
Now, again, what you started to hear just a little bit there off microphone were two things. Number one, there was somebody who started getting a little rowdy over on the other side of the crowd that was very quickly taken care of. And then you had a couple of Democrats just get up and leave. Because if Americans see Todd Blanche doing this right here, right now, and announcing that crime is down, and Americans are looking around Washington, D.C., and it's getting cleaner, and they're seeing major wins around the country, then all that's left for Republicans is just the economy to be decent. That's it. That's all that has to kick in. Is lower gas prices. If that kicks in, there is no way that Americans are going to buy anything else. And I do mean there are a number of wins that are finally being put in front of the American people. Today, from the National Security Division of the DOJ, Thomas Weir Paquin II, he is age 50, an American citizen who lived and worked in the People's Republic of China, pleaded guilty today to acting as an agent of a foreign government within the United States. Quote, Paquin admitted to being part of a conspiracy to obtain sensitive information from the U.S. government for the PRC, said Assistant Attorney General John A. Eisenberg. His actions are a betrayal of this nation and pose an unacceptable risk to our national security. The DOJ has also, again, in collaboration with Dr. Oz, regarding Medicare and Medicaid, in collaboration with Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, who we're going to get to in a second, and in collaboration, obviously, with Vice President J.D. Vance, Sean Duffy, several other members of the cabinet, have been tackling fraud that gets worse and worse and worse. And although we don't have time for the clip today, when you have members of Congress asking those from state governments in Ohio or Minnesota about the fraud, And it's a bunch of blubbering middle-aged leftist women clutching pearls and going, oh, the racism is so bad, it's so bad here. And you just have a calm individual from Congress saying, why are you okay with fraud? Tell me about the fraud. Why should certain cultures be given a two-tiered justice system walk in the park? And it's not just happening in Ohio or Minnesota, it's happening here in Indiana too. There's a Sikh community in Greenwood, Indiana, that's just south of Indianapolis, that's part of its own nonsense and gang violence and shell companies that are being rubber stamped here. It's one of the reasons we're getting rid of our current Secretary of State, Diego Morales, who should have been gotten rid of a long time ago, but that's another tale for another time. The Department of Justice at the federal level is targeting a significant amount of fraud, and the FBI is now putting faces to the fraud. So the Bureau's dropped a list of its most wanted fraudsters. By the way, we got to come up with another name for fraudsters. That sounds like some 80-year-old journalist from the New York Post describing a perv in Queens and these fraudsters. We got to find another term for fraudsters. But anywho, guys like Rodney Dean Allen, a wire fraud, mail fraud from Chris Burns, all of these individuals who the FBI is looking for, who they are attempting to track down. Now, the Democrats have a response to this. For example, Governor Mickey Sherrill is increasing funding for a detention, deportation, defense initiative for a total of $20.2 million to try to attempt legal defenses for those who have been captured in raids by Immigration Customs Enforcement, many of whom, you guessed it, are accused of committing certain kinds of fraud. That's how Immigration Customs Enforcement, the DOJ, the FBI, the NSA, was able to flag some of these individuals who are either here legally as immigrants or are illegal immigrants to the United States. Doesn't matter. They violated federal law. They've committed some kind of fraud, some kind of violent crime. They violated the Lake and Riley Act, for instance. It just so turns out that when the federal government does their job, and then the Democrats get in front of the country and go, well, you're just really super mean and awful and racist in committee hearings, it doesn't go very well. It doesn't go very well in a couple of ways. First of all, Representative Linda Sanchez of California, I told you, the Californians brought their worst. In a committee hearing with Scott Bessent, everyone's out there trying for their social media clips. And again, I've told you this before. You know, I hate congressional committee hearings. I hate them. They are just a way for people to get up on C-SPAN 1, C-SPAN 2, C-SPAN 3, C-SPAN 8, the Ocho, Corncob TV, and get little campaign ads, little social media clips of just yelling at members of the administration. That's all committee hearings are for. They're not like Representative Brandon Gill of Texas, who just asks questions of the committee hearing witnesses. Instead, what you have is Bessent being dragged before and not asked about these cases of fraud that are being tackled, but about nonsense. Here's Representative Linda Sanchez making a fool out of herself.
We follow the instructions of our lawyers, and we obey the law,
I hope
Representative.
that you're proud of your performance today, Mr. Secretary, because
I hope you get some social media clips.
I think it's pretty safe to say.
Boom, by the way. Hope you get your social media clips, correct.
That this is probably the most corrupt Treasury Department in our nation's history.
So and while you
dance around questions to protect Trump, Americans are suffering in Trump's spiraling economy.
Now, she's accusing the Treasury Department of covering up corruptly for President Trump. If you're going to accuse a department of being corrupt for President Trump, now you can say that the DOJ is being corrupt or is being friendly towards the President of the United States. And if that's the case, I'd like to see your evidence and we could argue about it. But that's where I would assume you would put your focus. Going after the Treasury Department, what? Because they floated a $250 commemorative celebration, $250 bill with Trump's face on it? That's your getcha? That? Okay. Radio crew, we're going to send you over to the commercial. Try not to accuse the Treasury Department of corruption and fraud while you're gone. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
Inflation is now rising faster than average hourly wages. Gas prices are at an all-time high with the war in Iran. The cost of groceries has risen 3.2% over the past years, and prices on most goods have gone up because of Trump's tariffs. So I don't see how you could call that anything other than a failure of the most corrupt Treasury Department in history.
So you hear the other members on the committee, on the her left and right in the chairs, are just saying, "What are you doing? This is the guy that's in charge of the Treasury Department. What does he have to do with any of this?" And this nonsense continued all over the place. Speaking of, again, we're talking about gas prices. Representative John Larson of Connecticut A man who once tried to beat J.B. Pritzker in an eating competition and almost won. I know. Representative John Larson's jowls act as a pendulum if you put them, next to a grandfather clock. They bear a striking resemblance. Anyway, Representative John Larson starts demanding questions about the gas tax, a thing enacted by the laws of Congress, to the Treasury Secretary. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Hamilton, but while there's a lot of, Lin-Manuel Miranda rapping about the Treasury Department, never once is there any kind of a tax on goods effectuated by the Treasury Department. That ain't how that works, Limp Bizkit. Here you go.
Are you in favor of eliminating the gas tax?
We have moved to...
Are you in favor of eliminating the gas tax?
We would like to work
Are you able to answer that, or is that not
Well, if I'm not interrupted, I can, Congressman.
Well, I'm waiting for your answer.
We have asked Congress to move to eliminate the gas tax. That is done through statute.
Correct. It's like, well, you're asking me if I'm in favor. Again, this is like putting me in front of a committee and saying, Tony, do you think that the Chicago Bulls are a poorly run team? And I would start to answer, well, I don't really know very much about the NBA. I don't like the NBA. And I would get cut off. Well, so you think the Bulls are being run amazingly then, do you? No, I didn't. Let me answer the question. That's how these committees work. It's nonsense. And Bessent, again, trying to answer the questions. By the way, Kevin Spears, thank you very kindly for the $2 super chat. It really has gotten so out of control.
You have moved that. So you're in favor of eliminating the gas tax.
We have asked for that.
So we can join bipartisanly today because you're in favor to eliminate the gas tax.
Again, the White House has asked for it, sir.
That is correct, by the way. Now, when Republicans have put forward requests or a lowering of the federal gas tax, or asking states for a lower suspension on gas tax on terms of a reciprocal funding maneuver, like temporarily, Democrats in committee have voted those things down. Again, I know, I'm not surprised, and you're not surprised, but this just is the same performative. It doesn't get any worse than Judy Chu today. So Representative Judy Chu of California probably humiliated herself worse than I've seen, since the Rubio hearings. This one's pretty bad. Here you go.
Recently, President Trump proudly claimed that he doesn't think about Americans' financial situation when it comes to the war with Iran.
Now, again, we all know that the president's saying that he's not allowing Iran to get a better deal with the United States from their side by Iran saying, oh, the economy is going to be bad. You better get out of this fast. We've played that in full context. Not difficult, but that's what she's trying.
I want to ask you, Secretary Bessent, do you agree with President Trump that you also do not care about Americans' financial situations?
Congresswoman, who was the president during World War I?
Can you...
No,
are you refusing to answer my question?
No, I'm asking, who was the president during World War I?
I don't know, but...
Oh, yikes. That is one large capital yikes indeed. I mean... You're a member... If you're a member of the Democrat Party, and for example, Radio Crew, you're just now joining us, welcome back. In this instance, if all you have to know, you're talking about administrative state, you're talking to a member of the administrative state, if you're going to lecture an individual on certain areas of policy that you are supposed to look over, again, things changed drastically for the Internal Revenue Service, things changed drastically for the income tax, things changed drastically for the entire U.S. Treasury Department during World War I. Wilson's not exactly a small-time president. You don't even know who the president during World War I is?
Clearly, you are not answering my question.
World War I was. Well, let me tell you.
So I'm clearly getting the idea that you do not want to answer whether you agree with President Trump that you do not care about Americans' financial situations.
President Trump does care about Americans' financial situation.
Well, he actually said that he doesn't.
No, that is a truncated thing, like everything is.
And he's correct. And again, the point that Bessent is trying to articulate there, and again, getting stomped over because, again, the committee hearings aren't actually about getting into any of the details on actual policy. What Bessent is trying to make the case, the only big case he's trying to make here, is that in the United States, the president, during a time of military action, might have to take certain things into account regarding U.S. economic policy in order to make a foreign policy maneuver. The idea that if any other country could possibly have an impact on the U.S. economy, that we just now let the rest of the world do whatever, that won't harm Americans. You know, the Americans just take a very weak perspective and get screwed over forever because, oh man, it might temporarily raise something here or there is ridiculous. But again, California, not sending its best. Judy Chu, excellent, stellar stuff. The biggest own of all, and this is the last big thing Democrats are trying to pull out here, is that everything has to do with Donald Trump supposedly covering up for Epstein and Israel. It's a combination maneuver. Essentially, Tucker Carlson is writing the Democrats' talking points for them. That kind of crap. This came down to Senator Wyden, where, you know, Bessent decided he wasn't going to take it anymore. Pretty stellar stuff. Here you go.
Senator Wyden has mendaciously slandered the Treasury building in an attempt to cover up his son having an investment meeting with Jeffrey Epstein to ask for funding. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Let's be clear here. Nobody is interested in the ramblings of a capo in the most corrupt regime in American history. We want to get some facts about this deal. That's what we're here for.
Oh, interesting. So when the shoe's on the other foot, and it's actually, wait a minute, Wyden was soliciting, you know, donations from Epstein for a good long while. All of a sudden, we don't need to hear, this doesn't have anything to do with this committee. Hang on a second there. Excellent. I love the double standard. You can see Representative, Madeline Dean try the very same nonsense over on the Rubio side. Because once we get over to kind of the foreign policy matters, things get extra silly really, really quickly. So first of all, the president made some statements today about the Islamic Republic of Iran and kind of the hokey pokey there. We'll get to that in a minute. Before we get there, Rubio did get into a little bit of a fun-filled fistfight on this very same matter with Madeline Dean. Here you go. It's pretty special.
Distribution.
Well, because one of those were in cahoots with Hamas. And we saw an incredible amount of the aid flow into Hamas's hands.
Reclaiming my time, the aid was held up at the border by Israel, and you know it.
You got to fix your rules here. You can't even answer a question.
You're not following the rules. You're very familiar with how this works.
No, I don't. I never served in the House. This is a weird rule where you ask a question and I can't answer.
Okay, so to frame this up a little bit, Madeline Dean is suggesting that Rubio is like in some kind of secretive deal with Israel to hold up aid from all of these poor innocent, these poor innocent Palestinian Authority people. And, you know, again, Rubio points out, as all of the evidence states, in fact, as Hamas admitted very clearly, they were taking the aid at the border and they would often shoot the semi-driver who was trying to bring in the aid, and then they would just take the aid and give it over to Hamas. So Madeline Dean cuts him off because, again, nothing in these committees is about getting you, the American people, answers. You say, why do I point that out? The reason C-SPAN exists is to give you answers about what is being spoken of and to in these committee hearings. The reason a public committee is public is so that you, out there watching this excellently produced show by a very handsome Hoosier, can know what the heck's going on in our nation's capital from the people that you sent. But that's not what goes on here. And so what we're seeing is I've always known the whole reclaiming my time theater was bad, but they're getting worse at it because, as Donald Trump has brought forward in this administration, he's kind of shattered the glass in which you need to treat all of the people acting like children seriously.
Would you please add time to the clock?
Nope.
So after trying to talk over Rubio and saying, well, is it true that you're bad and evil? And then Rubio starts dancing. Well, actually, how did you know that Israel? Well, okay, well, I didn't. And also Jeffrey Epstein, all that crap. Finally, she then turns around after Rubio starts to answer and says, oh, reclaiming my time. Mr. Chairman, can you give me more time to yell at Marco Rubio? And now a lot of these chairmen and chairwomen are saying, no, you're posturing like a child. You don't get more time. The time is allotted for you to ask questions and the person to answer. If you're not going to play this game, no, you're getting extra time. And everyone laughs at her because she's, ridiculous. So the performative theater is really, really embarrassing. I mean, they were doing like pre-show tailgating influencer videos to go into this. I mean, you actually have like Cory Booker doing the, hey, what's up, gang? I'm getting ready to interview Marco Rubio. Make sure to hit that bell. I mean, that kind of crap. Please don't take my word for it. Here was Senator Cory Booker, Angry Eyes himself of Joyzy, doing a little, hey guys, I'm getting ready to.
So here's some breaking news about the Iran war. Marco Rubio, under oath, said to me under questioning that the Iran war is over. We all know this is not true. That very same evening, according to our own military, we carried out strikes again on Iran. This war is not over, what he said.
I love it. So, hey, guy, I mean, again, this is not working for you, dude. It's not. Same thing with Representative Ted Lieu. He tried the same, just very, very strange, bizarre influencer style stuff. Again, if you want my job, dude, start a podcast. You know, get out there and do. I mean, again, give it to Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz doesn't get performative in Senate committee hearings. He has the verdict with Ted Cruz, where he then does like pundit work.
I am on my way to go question Secretary of State Marco Rubio. I'm going to ask Secretary Rubio about Donald Trump's health and cognitive abilities. There's been multiple meetings where Donald Trump has literally fallen asleep while Marco Rubio is talking. Something is very wrong with the president's health or cognitive abilities, and we're going to get to the bottom of it.
Okay, so first of all, Columbo, no. Number two, dose. I seem to remember in the last administration, it was a very, you know, see no, hear no, speak no evil kind of situation about old Joseph R. Dead to the World Biden. Well, you know, I mean, he was busy stroking out before going to Waffle House, I guess. But beside that, what actually ended up happening? Because you get a little overconfident about, I'm getting ready to go duke it out with Marco Rubio. Not the guy to do this with. This ain't Pam Bondi. This ain't Kristi Noem, who you can kind of get riled up like a Yorkie. You know what I'm talking about? You go into a house with a small dog and you start talking really excited. You can rile up the small dog. No. Not the case with Rubio. Didn't go the way he wanted. Here you go.
Sleeping right next to you.
No, he's not.
If Donald Trump cannot stay awake at these important meetings where the cameras are rolling, imagine what he's like when the cameras are not there. So I'm going to ask you, have you been at classified meetings where Donald Trump has fallen asleep or had trouble staying awake?
I've never been at any meeting where, and the things you're showing me now, he was not falling asleep. And
so,
I think
so
it's
you're
outrageous
lying
that I'm before
again.
The Foreign Affairs
You're lying
Committee of the United States
consistently
House of Representatives
to
asking
Congress.
questions about sleep.
I love this. I do. I would say, so did he do this? And Rubio was like, no. And also, it's a leading question. You just said, so if all of this is true, when did you stop beating your wife? And Rubio was like, that's not how this works. And then Ted's like, so you admit you were beating your wife. Incredible. Didn't go very well at all. And Rubio is the guy to do this because, again, not acting crazy, performative, insane, pretty on par with a lot of things. And regarding the foreign policy situation, I should point out, you know, a little bit of flair for some sarcasm and you know, some dropping some sweet references. That never hurts.
So Hezbollah is not just a challenge to Israel, it's a challenge to Lebanon, to the Lebanese state and the Lebanese people. And we are hopeful that we can create a paradigm in which Lebanon's government and Israel can work together to disarm Hezbollah and allow the people of Lebanon to reclaim its country. But it's complex. This has been going on since, since OJ had isotoners in those commercials. So
that since OJ had isotoners, that's a lovely little shout back to Power, little Kanye West lyric. Okay, clever. By the way, if you think that this is just laying out a ground for why the Trump administration is actually effectuating some things that Americans are looking for, that's very true. But this also is starting to function. The man's generating momentum. He is. As far as 2028 is concerned, again, I'm not trying to get into the weeds on, who are we looking at? The man's competence is not slowing down here. Radio crew, we're going to send you guys to the commercial break there. Be on the lookout for OJ with isotoners. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Don't act like I never told you. All right. The most awkward moments were either from Representative Sarah Jacobs, also from California, which the gotcha style committee stuff. This is not how to make the pitch. Right now, it's the congressmen and women who are on display, not Rubio. Rubio's around for a while. Again, the way that wars work with the American people, military operations work. If at the end they are successful, Americans like them. The Gulf War, during the first Gulf War, was not popular. It wasn't. After it was over and we had kicked Saddam Hussein in the teeth, it was very popular with Americans. That war single-handedly, that and also Panama for that matter, single-handedly ended the Vietnam syndrome of the United States. It matters. At the end of it, what you got out of there. Not limping home sadly and softly. And again, we're going to get to that here in a couple of minutes. But as far as Marco Rubio here, he's not the one on display. And the congressmen and women know this. So they're trying to cut these little campaign ads so they can say they're fighting Trump and all of this unpopular stuff. That's not going to be enough to get people out on the blue side or the red side to go and vote. It's not. It's not driving people to the polls. Energizing the base isn't enough because it's not even energizing the entire base. So anyway, Representative Sarah Jacobs of California has decided the way that she's going to sway the country is to talk about the 2020 election. Honey, sweetie baby, best of luck to you.
Last question for you. Mr. Secretary, who won the 2020 presidential election?
I'm not here to answer a question. We're talking about 2020. This is a foreign affairs committee.
Okay, great. You can't answer the question, even though we all know that President Biden won.
I don't answer the question because the Secretary of State, I do not participate in domestic political issues.
This is not about domestic political issues.
Certainly
this is about our democracy.
You're asking me to opine just like I don't do campaign rallies.
It seems like
I don't do because as Secretary of State, we're not supposed to. That's been the long tradition of the department. And you should know that if you've been on this committee for any period of time.
Mr. Secretary, it seems like you have an issue admitting facts. You can't say that the president lost the 2020 election, just like you won't admit President Trump is losing this reckless war of choice, and just like you couldn't admit that the shoes the president bought you were too big. You clearly don't know what winning.
Oh, you got him Rubio's shoes because there was this meme on Twitter that like Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson shared where Rubio was in small shoes or big shoes or something. Aha, that I got him. Yeah, okay.
Means, and not because the facts are unclear to you, it's because telling the truth would cost you your job.
All this is pre-written down. Do you see it? She's reading from the script. If you're going to do this kind of a thing, so I do this show with just bullet points of where I plan to go next. I don't have all my little jokes and quips written down because, see, I'm actually smart enough to come up with this kind of stuff. The ADHD doesn't hurt. I don't have to script out all my little gotcha points. See, the thing is, in politics and communications in general, if you don't have the talent for it, reading your jokes, your quippy gotchas off a script is humiliating for you. Also, not the entire voter base of this country, not even the vast majority of this country's voter base is constantly on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all the social media platforms. This idea that you gotta only appeal to the youths, they tried that in the Kamala Harris campaign. You know what? It didn't work. No lessons learned.
And the American people are entitled to a Secretary of State who tells them the truth even when the president doesn't want to hear it. And my constituents, our service members, deserve better. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Okay. Exciting, beautiful, hilarious, super duper goofy, good for you. I mean, I don't recommend doing anything in the way that those on the left have run in these committees. We'll get to some of that here in a minute. Radio crew, welcome back. There was one last thing that before we get to the end of some of the committee stuff, before we cover some of the rest of the national and international news, I want to take a second before I lose my radio audience in Indianapolis specifically to talk about one very last, extremely frustrating, nonsensical case that has been going on for far too long in my home state of Indiana. Because if the Department of Justice, if, in fact, the Treasury Department, if the National Security Agency, if we're looking at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, if we're looking at the Department of Transportation, if they have pointed out consistently and clearly that here in the United States, there are rings, plural, of foreign groups, foreign-based groups, legal and illegally immigrated, who are participating in fraud, who are trying to get those who do not speak any form of English commercial driver's licenses, who are participating in widespread Medicare and Medicaid fraud. Then, after we see a couple of these patterns, for example, Somalian fraud in Minnesota, for example, Somalian fraud and just generalized Middle Eastern, third worldism country style and second worldism fraud out of Ohio, out of California, out of Nevada, out of Oregon, out of Tennessee, out of the state of New York, out of Georgia. Even trying to operate in the deepest red states like Texas and Florida. Then maybe if there is a cluster of organizations, if there was a cluster of homes or groups in which there are a lot of companies operating in the very same area that just so happen to be of the exact same kind of culture, maybe it's worth taking a bit of a look. So in the state of Indiana, there is a situation that has now developed to the point of getting a suspect of a possible gang attack, which is where a lot of this comes to its head. So from Angela Gannott over at Fox 59, the Next Star outlet here in Indiana, a Greenwood shooting suspect turned himself in what witnesses say was a planned gang hit. Harmanjit Singh faces a charge of criminal recklessness in the January 10th shooting on Brent Branch Circle, where 2 men died. Kuldeep Singh and Virender Singh died, and 2 other men survived the shooting that happened at a birthday party. According to the probable cause, the FBI says, that would be the FBI Indianapolis office, says that Virender Singh was a member of the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. Virender was under federal investigation for extortion and drug trafficking. There was a fight at the party where police say Virender pulled out a gun and fired shots, and multiple others fired back. A witness told police the argument stemmed from a dispute about a trucking company that Harmanjit and Virender had previously co-owned. The witness said Virender owned Harmanjit Money. Jagdeep Singh is the other wanted shooting suspect who faces a charge of criminal recklessness. Police believe he fled the country because he was here illegally. Now, to back out of this just a little bit and explain why I'm so frustrated about this, there's an indie reporter, friend of mine over on X, who has made this clear, actually a core group of individuals who I'm rather friendly with, who's been looking into this more than I've had time to. There is a neighborhood subdivision in Greenwood, Indiana called University Park with hundreds, yes, hundreds, of trucking companies which are owned by Sikhs, including Sikh Indians, Sikh Pakistanis, etc. These Sikhs are now, yes, indeed, shooting and killing each other in gang-related violence over trucking disputes. Where is the investigation? If there is a mafia suspected, if there are a lot of Italian or Sicilian-owned businesses that happen to be part of gang violence, the Federal Bureau of Investigation will then go investigate those with suspected ties to the mafia. Where are, and I'm asking this very clearly, where are the federal authorities, where are the state authorities in investigating? Oh, you're telling me all these are legitimate trucking companies? Sure, we haven't seen any other examples of, again, a big pocket of foreign-owned. By the way, this is a partial in a residential neighborhood. All of these just random local LLC trucking companies that just seem to be all crammed together, many of them in the same building. Sounds a lot like that Somalian fraud case out of Dayton and Columbus, Ohio. Wow, I'm so shocked. So to be clear, there is far more work to be done. In red states, in blue states, this is the kind of action that is draining expense and spending money from the American people. And there is a growing class, although I should say shrinking class, but there are growing voices in the shrinking class of some establishmentarian Republicans who are taking the opportunity right now to say, well, if we question any of this, that's really anti-Sikh or anti-Islamophobic, so terrible. No, looking at a culture with individuals as a part of said culture who participate in this crap, that culture has brought on itself shame and scorn. It is an onus on the people of that very culture, to exonerate themselves by exposing and getting rid of this crap. Not like we saw in the United Kingdom, a mother of the Singh individual who stabbed and killed Henry Novak, hiding the blade for her son. This kind of nonsense cannot stand. And if the state of Indiana wants to hold any kind of credibility at all, instead of being worried we're going to be called bad name and doing your job and not worrying about a delegate convention in Fort Wayne, but actually doing what you were elected to do, might be worth your time before I run and take your job out of spite. So that said, for my fellow Hoosiers listening, we'll get back to some of the other information here. Now on some other news in this particular matter of fraud, the Trump administration is doing, I would say, quite a bit to dive into these particular instances of fraud, which are wasting all kinds of federal money. There are investigations that have been ramped up in California investigations that have been ramped up in Nevada, in Oregon, in Ohio, of course, and in Florida. Indiana should be on that list. There should be other states. Kentucky should be on that list as well. There are several individuals in our audience who have sent us quite a bit of information. This is something that is owed the American people. And as on that matter, on the Save America Act, on voting fraud, being added to the Budget Reconciliation 2.0 process, that just failed 48-50. So Tom Tillis, Lisa Murkowski, Mitch McConnell, and Susan Collins either didn't vote or voted against the Save America Act as part of the Budget Reconciliation. Who could have told you that those would be the senators that would stand in the way? I'm so shocked. Gosh, it's almost like I'm kind of good at calling those things. So Radio Crew will catch you guys tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern here on the Tony Kinnett Cast, our broadcast TV audience as well. We're going to continue on the live stream. There is more to tackle this evening. So we'll see the broadcast audience real soon. YouTube.com/Daily Signal is where you can find us. You guys take very good care. All right, over to our lovely live stream audience and things for just a bit on the bonus tonus section of the show tonight. Let's take care of kind of the end of the foreign policy stuff, because there is a little bit more. So regarding Rubio, so last of the fist fight here, one Democrat representative, Sidney Kamlager Dove, who I have never really heard of until today. She's also a representative from California.
Oh, there's a big surprise.
I'm shocked. Man, California just sending the worst people that they can find to be in these committees. She got in such a spicy fight with Marco Rubio that it resulted in her stomping out, to be all huff and tough, you go girl. It didn't go very well for her though. So here's this exchange.
Because you have said these things, you have shared these talking points before.
They're not talking points, they're the truth.
But it is hard to take your word for it when this is the most corrupt administration in American history.
Well, that's
we're
your
talking
opinion.
pardons for sale. We're talking about no-bid contracts to those on Trump's family and friends plan. We're talking about a $1.8 billion slush fund. And I think that's corruption. The American people think that's corruption. They want to know if you think that's corruption.
Okay. Number two, this goes right to the point of transparency. You're absolutely wrong about the way the money flows. It's pretty straightforward, and I'll share.
So I'm going to have to reclaim my time again because
the
what
kind of process is this? They get to ask questions and you don't get to answer?
It's my time.
There it is. See? It's never, again, if I were a congressman, God forbid, if I ran for Congress, I sure hope not, and I someday sat in these committees, see, what I would do is I would take the time that I had in the committee to ask questions and get answers from the people, because then guess what I would have? If I was competent enough as a questioner, I would get answers. Kind of cool, yeah? And then I would take those answers and I would talk about those. Cool concept, right? It's almost like that's what the hearing is for. You have a hearing so you can ask questions and people can hear the answers. Huh? I know. Cool concept.
Question about corruption is really important.
So why am I here if I don't get to answer your questions or your defamatory statements?
Correct. Why am I here? Why are we doing this? Why are we chilling out here on ESPN 8, the Ocho, if I'm not actually allowed to give an answer?
Reclaiming my time,
Reclaim.
Mr.
I want
Chair.
you to, but I want to reclaim. Well, do I get time? Because you make these defamatory statements and no one can talk here.
If you can't call out corruption in this country, then how can you call it out in another
Well, I can't say anything because you won't let me speak.
Question. It is about credibility and your credibility meter is on empty right now. This oil.
These guys just get to talk and I don't get to answer?
Who determines the barrels of oil that get sold? How
but you
many
won't
of
let
them?
me answer your
What
question.
price
I have an
does it
answer
get
for your
sold?
question.
Where is it going?
Oh, I get it.
will
They
let
have to
you.
use their time for me to answer
The
your
onus
question.
is on you to
a
prove
joke.
that there is no corruption happening.
Well, how do
that
I
is
prove it if
your
you don't let me talk?
responsibility as the Secretary of State. And you know what? Normally we would have access to that data. That's the
You do.
transparency.
You just don't know where to
But you're
look.
not showing us any receipt. Well, then show us.
But
Do you
you won't.
commit? Do you commit to coming back here with whoever the person is who is monitoring the sales of the oil? Bring them before this committee.
Can I
Show the
reclaim my
receipts.
time?
Have the documentation. You don't have this time yet. I am talking about your credibility and evidence, not your talking points, because
Guards, this woman has lost her composure. I mean, come on.
talking points are never a replacement for transparency
I agree,
and
but that's what you're
documentation.
saying. You're saying talking
And
points
we
without
have
an answer.
We are 5 months into this and no audits. Zero visibility into the
100%
contracts that are
false.
awarded.
100%
Zero
false.
Unfortunately,
transparency about where the
Representative's time
money
has
is
expired.
going.
Representative Salazar is recognized.
Yes. And giving contracts with no transparency
Can I
is
borrow your
exactly
time
the
to
reason
answer?
why you
Now, there is a shining moment here where Representative Maria Salazar actually does something pretty decent, which is she lets Rubio speak. So we're going to chalk up a rare victory here for Representative Maria Salazar of Florida. Again, wish that you weren't awful in other areas, but a little shining sparkle moment here for you.
shut down USAID. So practice what you preach. I've yielded my
Oh,
time.
she gets to.
Oh, you go, girl. Yeah, you tell him discount Karine Jean Capone in your pinstripe suit and the green scarf that you stole from Oscar the Grouch. You tell him.
Scream now too.
Chairman,
Scream and
can we
shout.
take down her words?
I'll give you some time. I'll give you some.
Now, I will say this. There's this little, again, we're in the Robert's Rules of Order purgatory, which is after someone says something rude, instead of an actual consequence, it's, Mr. Chairman, even though all of the cameras have already recorded everything, can we strike these words from the record as though that does anything? The original purpose of striking words from the record is that back in the day, you would strike the words and then no one else in the broader country would get to hear them because they wouldn't be on the record. I know. Now it's meaningless because, as you can see, Fox News' camera is pointing there in the committee chamber. The words can't be, I'd like to say, can these words be retracted, from the good women from the little state of California,
Some of my time. Let me just
Okay.
just
Oh God,
change
what
the
kind of thing
energy.
is this? What is this? You get asked questions for 5 minutes and you don't get time to answer. It's not a hearing.
I think you said clown
Like
show
a dunk
before.
tank.
I
What
don't,
is
I don't
this?
have to tell you. I don't.
Now, at this point, two fun things happen. So again, he calls this a circus or a clown show. Correct. As we've said here on the show before. And Secretary of State, if for some reason you got that term from hearing the show, undoubtedly, doubtful, I'm sure, because there are so many shows which call committee hearings a circus or a clown show. Dude, please come on this show and tell us all about the suffering that you deal with these people. We'll listen. We'll talk about it. We don't even have to do any Graham Platner style domestic abuse to cope with it. I know, crazy indeed. Anywho, then Representative Sidney Kamlager Dove, who didn't get to be as strong woman, you go girl, as she wanted to. She then does a little stomping out. She does herself a little Colonel Bogey march right on out of there. But then gets called out on her way out the door, which again, chef's kiss moment for sure.
Americans in
Why is she leaving? I'm going to answer her questions.
I will.
Oh, she's go. Okay, I got it. Well, thank you for coming.
So she starts squawking, yelling, normal behavior, fascinating behavior, as some anthropologists would say. But then, well, thank you for coming, I guess. If you just come here to do some yelling. I feel the same way at unlimited testimony time for state legislatures, by the way. Don't get me wrong. If there is one criticism that I have levied at the Indiana state legislature, despite the fact that they are very often worthless when it comes to getting decent bills through, sorry, just the truth is flowing from my pores this evening after being sick for a day. But unlimited testimony time where you just have people come in and yell for like 18 hours is not helpful. This idea where we pretend to be super duper civil, if you're going to have the WWE, then it might as well be the Parliament in the UK, where there's heckling and yelling and somebody throws a cafeteria tray. I mean, at least if it's going to be a junior high lunchroom, go in all the way. Don't do this where we pretend to be civil and then you stomp off like you're an angry child who just got told no brownies for dinner.
All right, so we're going to talk about. I just want to.
Unfortunately, Representative's time has expired. Representative Salazar.
Good times. Great times. Again, the Senate and the House of Representatives, they're in great hands. Very good hoots. Now, on the foreign policy stuff, is President Trump actually going to do a couple of things regarding Iran? Are we going to see some action? At this point, I do not believe there's any kind of a deal that could be crafted. I could be wrong. I am very, what's the word here? Bearish on a deal. I don't see that happening. At some point, the president of the United States is going to have to do some rootin' tootin' and shootin'. Now, the House of Representatives did just pass a war powers resolution. Does that mean anything? I will once again remind our excellent audience, no, it means nothing. The reason the war powers resolution means nothing is The president of the United States already has all of the special powers that he needs with the funding that he has to carry out military actions. No president has ever been stricken down by a war powers resolution. It's ceremonial and it's performative. Why are there now suddenly a number of Republicans who are able to join over, like 5? Well, Thomas Massie is just going like full on anti-Semite. He's giving a lecture on the USS Liberty tomorrow, which is pretty disgusting. But anywho, never heard him upset about the U.S. Marines that Hezbollah killed. But boy, those Jews, gotta get them, I guess. Other than Thomas Massie, you had a few representatives on the coasts who are very worried in purplish districts about their seats, who also joined in this war powers resolution. What does it do? It says, hey, Mr. President, we really wish that you would get permission from us to do the thing. That's it. Now, do I think it's going to pass the Senate? I don't know. I give it a 50-50. But if it passes, does that mean, it's going to become law? No, it's not a bill. Congress can pass a bill. They're not gonna. They would need, you guessed it, 60 votes in the Senate to pass the bill. And boy, howdy, guess what? The filibuster hasn't been nuked. Aw, man, shoulda, woulda, could. Aw, nuts. Performative nonsense so that other media outlets, because a lot of them did today, they were like, breaking, House passes, war powers resolution. It does nothing. War power resolution. Do you know what that did to George W. Bush? Nothing. You know what it did to Barack Obama? Nothing. You know what it did to Joe Biden? Nothing. War powers resolution acts do nothing. 0. You lose. Good day, sir. So one very large womp womp. But hey, I'm making a big deal about this.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Bold strategy indeed. The president did say this today, so I think the president will eventually take some kind of military action against Iran. Do I know what it's going to look like yet? No. I think that there is a lot of confusion in the sea at present, which is why you have a lot of the disparate media reporting. Nevertheless, here's what the president said today from his own Donald J. Trump lips to the press.
Many, many times over, and it's been a long time since you've
heard of it. Do you think Cuba is close to
President.
collapsing, though, based on everything you just laid out? Do you think that Cuba is close to collapsing?
It sort of collapsed.
The question asked by the reporter is, with everything else, do you believe that Cuba is collapsing? And sorry, that was the question. Sometimes it's harder to hear.
And we're going to handle that as soon as we've finished. I like to do one thing at a time, and we'll take care of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And as soon as that's done on our way back, we'll just make a little brief stop off.
Mr. President.
We'll take care of it. We want to help them out. Look, we have a lot of people that voted for Trump. Whether they did or not, it didn't matter. But I had 95% of the Cubans voted for me. They're unbelievable people. They're energetic. They're entrepreneurial. You know, some of the richest people in Miami are Cuban. They're unbelievable. And I'm going to take good care of them. I'm going to let them go back to their land. They want to be back with family. You know, they have a lot of family over there. They've been treated very badly by Cuba. But we're going to treat Cuba well, and we're going to let our people go back and let them invest in Cuba if they'd like. So we have some very good plans for Cuba. I think, we have to get rid of the regime was very tough, very nasty. The difference is now they don't have money coming in. They had a lot of money coming in from Venezuela. They don't have any money coming. They had oil coming in. They had money coming in. But we're going to take care of Cuba.
Mr. President, sir. Mr. President.
And they, you know what? They want us to. The people want us there so bad.
Mr. President, sir. Last night, huge.
So the president made the case, maybe we're going to swing back after Iran and deal with Cuba. And so at this point, do I believe that the president of the United States is going to be eternally marred and bogged down in all of this stuff? No, I really just don't see it. I think that at some point things will break. We're one of those things. So that all said, a couple of other fun little bits this evening before we shuffle on out that I think are worth talking about. That was a fun comment. The blue dot paper background is depressing and evokes the 1950s. Please change. My dude, it ain't that serious. All right. Moving on to some of the other male-timey goodness, because apparently Graham Platner, he's doing a special MS Now super duper ultra incredible interview over on the airwaves. I guess, again, MS Now, if anyone's watching, we're kind of keeping an eye out for those clips because I'm curious. I'm curious to see what the guy's going to say. I do know that Chris Coons, again, amid all of the crisis and the nonsense, has come out to say he's seen all of this, but he's going to give a measure of grace. Aww.
And, frankly, Mr. Platner is a four-tour combat veteran and someone whose conduct as he came home from war, many have questioned. I don't know him and don't know him at all well, but I'm going to give him a measure of grace and wait until I get a chance to hear more about the details of all these different allegations. In my view, the folks who we have here in the Senate and who we might have here in the Senate, we should hold a high standards.
Hey, cool, fun, nifty fact here. He finished his combat tour in the U.S. Marine Corps in 2007. First of all, coming home from war and then just going into a big pattern of domestic abuse is not exactly a vote for me for the U.S. Senate kind of an argument. But if it's years late, 2013, guys, that's 6 years after 2007. That's no excuse for, domestic abuse regarding, Lindsay Fifield and these other ladies. Just large capital yikes. Sorry to bounce back and forth on this. I did want to mention regarding the Cuba situation, the Department of Justice has also now levied a series of sanctions, or excuse me, maybe not the Department of Justice. Let me make sure I get this exact detail correct here. I believe that maybe the State Department, the United States federal government, either through the State Department, I don't believe through the Department of Justice, is throwing a couple of extra sanctions on top of the current leader, Miguel Diaz-Canel of Cuba. Sorry, that was a little last, kind of a part and parcel here. One comment said, so why are Democrats trying to drag their feet and are trying very hard? Sorry, this is a question from Mike. Why are they trying so hard not to get rid of Graham Platner so there will be time for Janet Mills to run and possibly win? There's a very good reason, and it all comes down to 3 emails that I have had the pleasure of looking at. So as many of you know, I have a couple of friends who occasionally leak very fun things to me from the DNC, both in some state Democrat parties as well as the national DNC, the Democrat National Committee. I have seen 3 emails that this individual has sent to me whose identity I am keeping very safe and secret because I want to keep getting more leaks. Additionally, because, if there is this kind of stuff where I'm not giving you the name of the source, I try to put this on the way back into the show so that, it's not up front. It's like, why are you making this a big part or a big pillar of your investigation? So in these emails, 2 of them are from Monday. 1 of them is from yesterday, Wednesday, in which the Democratic National Committee is soliciting from certain groups inside the DNC for ways, strategies, media strategies, PR strategies, public relations mostly, to try to see how they can shift their support to Janet Mills while simultaneously not taking heat for having supported Graham Platner for so long. So originally they had Graham Platner, who's very popular with the youth because he's like an open socialist, very, very anti-capitalist. He's very, very anti-Israel, which is also popular with the free Palestine part of the party. He's for the youths. And they can't really do very much with him because he looks and acts, at least on stage, like a basic white guy, which is what Democrats think they really need to run. They think that was the problem with Kamala Harris losing. They think Kamala Harris was a mixed black and Indian woman or whatever they claimed that she was. It changed from week to week. And they think that's why people didn't like her. No. The reason that people didn't like Kamala Harris is that she's an idiot. But Democrats have run James Tallarico and have then, dropped my pearls. And then now have also run Graham Platner because he fits the basic white dude mold. That's what they think. And so now they recognize they might have to go with, very tired, dusty old Janet Mills, governor of Maine. And they don't want to be stuck with the same thing they were stuck with Kamala, which was several months of, well, why did you stick with Joe Biden for so long? Because they own way less of the media infrastructure than they did. Scott Pelley's gone at 60 Minutes, and good riddance to that. So if they don't have all of that media infrastructure, you don't think that Alex Thompson and Jake Tapper of Axios and CNN respectively, I've already talked to individuals on the CNN production side. Jake Tapper absolutely plans to ask members of the Democrat establishment why they stuck with Graham Platner for so long, because of what he did with the Joe Biden investigation eventually. If they don't have that kind of media cover, they're really screwed. Now, internal polling, whether it's for James Tallarico in Texas or Graham Platner up in Maine, they're not showing great numbers. As Nate Silver, formerly from the 538, points out, internal polling usually skews about 4 to 8 points in favor of the internal pollster. Meaning, if James Tallarico does an internal poll, take whatever the eventual poll is and subtract 4 points of it for James Tallarico. Well, he's only up like 1 to 3 points against Ken Paxton. Graham Platner is only up 1 point on Susan Collins, which is super red alert, no territory. So it's not getting any better. Now, do Republicans need to do some things in the Congress? Absolutely. Are they doing things in Congress? No. No, they're not. No, they are not at all. Now, there's one interesting clip on, at least that I'm being sent here, for some of the Graham Platner stuff so far. I'll get to this in a second. But first, because I'm chugging water like I'm either dehydrated or a lunatic, mostly because I'm just exhausted and, was sick yesterday. And after the show's over, I think my voice is going to give out again. I'm sure to the cheering and celebration of quite a few people. One of the reasons that I am getting through this evening is because the water that I'm drinking does not taste terrible. I'm sure many of you have been sick, and the water that you have drank while you're sick has been truly awful. There are a lot of people that I guess try to make it kind of part of their personality that, hey, they're from flyover country and they're drinking, good old fashioned well water. You know that I truly am a Hoosier, not only because of the everything about me, but because when I actually drink water, I'm very proud of not drinking like crappy tap water or bottled water. I am a down and home raised well water kind of guy. And because I hate the taste of city water, there's kind of some gross stuff in there. I'm sure a lot of you know. There's a lot of old lead pipes. I'm sure a lot of you know that there is a lot of gross stuff that is in fact in the water table these days. And Victor Davis Hanson, good friend over here on the Daily Signal as well, recommended that I try CovePure. That's why you see the mason jar of water here on the news desk next to my cup of coffee, your energy drink every single night. It's delicious. The CovePure machine I've got over there uses reverse osmosis to give me the purest drinking water you're going to find anywhere. Literally anything that is not water gets filtered out, which means that I'm not choking on a bunch of stuff that I can suddenly taste when I'm sick. You know what I'm talking about. You have the flu, you have a cold, you have some kind of gross stuff. All of a sudden, everything tastes gross. My CovePure water does not taste gross right now. Instant refrigeration, this stuff is frosty, ice cold. So right now, I'm enjoying it's delicious. Later on, when I use it to make a cup of Earl Grey Earl Grey tea, not coffee, way too late, it's going to be piping hot. It's going to be delicious. That's in the CovePure machine. No stupid plastic pitcher I got to keep refilling. Now, my wife spends the day sneaking out to the studio, not to catch me in a domestic abuse affair, because I have a healthy marriage, but instead to get some CovePure water, because I'm not a scumbag like Graham Platner. I know, man, the sponsorship read just has all kinds of wonderful twists and turns this evening. You should go to covepure.com/TonyK. Yeah, I'm openly, you guys know how picky I am about my sponsors for the program. Not just everybody advertises here. covepure.com/TonyK. Get a CovePure machine. It's great. You get a special deal just for my audience. Because the first time we mentioned them on the show, they sold a lot of CovePure machines. So we're doing it right. That's right. covepure.com/TonyK. Huge thanks to them for sponsoring the show. Now, last but least, before we finish out this evening on the last of the Graham Platner stuff, he is desperately trying to claim that he didn't do nothing and that all of this is, what's the right word? Like it was just a spiritual problem, I suppose, here you go. This is from Graham Platner, I guess MS Now this evening.
Grappled with how to process her experiences. She was quick to note he never hit me, he never punched me. She said he regularly grabbed her by the shoulders, sometimes hard enough to leave marks. On one occasion, yanked her out of a cab by her wrist after an argument in which she wanted to stay in the car. During one argument, she recalled he twisted her arm behind her back, shoved her into a bedroom, and held the door closed from the other side so she couldn't get out, telling her to remain there until she was calm. Eventually, Ms. Fifield said she fell asleep and left the next morning. It hurt, she said, but she added, it didn't cause any injury. It didn't break my arm.
So that's Chris Hayes, if you can't recognize the voice of MS now. He's doing the full read. I've read some difficult things on air before, even on teleprompter. I've been a guest on Newsmax's the Right Squad with Chris Plant, and I've read in on the teleprompter kind of the opening framing for the shot. Same over on the CNN morning news side of things over with Audi. And when you have to read things in as kind of a framer, it can be difficult as an anchor. But when you have to read stuff that is this bad and pretend as though it is just a normal allegation, you can hear the stress in Chris's voice already this evening on Thursday, June the 4th, where he's like, it hurt, it left marks. Oh, but it isn't hitting. Oof.
Did that happen?
No. It
No, okay?
did not. There are some allegations in this piece that I just want to be kind of unequivocal about are simply not true. Anything alleging physicality, anything alleging that I knew what my tattoo was, these are the statements of someone who's politically motivated.
Ah, okay. Huh. How about that? How about that indeed? Oh, well, any statements like this that would suggest that I domestically abused? Sure, all of the saying I was going to rape people, all of the stuff that fit all of the other scandals that I've been a part of, that there are documented videos or photos or social media screenshots of. Wow. Yeah.
In this piece, there's a lot about my struggling, not being a good boyfriend, certainly self-medicating with alcohol, and I've been very upfront since the beginning of this campaign that was a pretty dark period of my life after I came back from my combat service, and that's what that kind of life looks like.
Oh, yeah. See, I know a lot of guys, just because of prior work that I've done, as a lot of you do, who have come home from military service, either conventional or contractor service, and they have struggled with PTSD. A lot of them didn't just suddenly go into rageful fits where they beat or grabbed or shook or kidnapped their partner. Not exactly. I'm looking for the part of PTSD that says, oh, I need a totem cough right now. No.
And so there are things in this that I absolutely will take responsibility for and have been speaking about openly for months now.
So why, this is my question here, listening to this for the first time. I'm listening to it the same time you do because this aired while we were on air a couple of minutes ago. My question right up front. Why do you get to say some of this, the stuff that I can't refute, is totally true and it was because of my time in my service, but all of the stuff that's brand new didn't happen? Because you were on camera, you were on recording for the last couple of weeks saying, oh, there's no more new scandals. Oh, this never happened. I didn't have anything. There's nothing else. And then all of I purchased cocaine a couple of years ago, and I know the dealers, and I think about masturbating in porta potties and all that stuff. Then when that comes out, I forgot about that. I had no idea until you brought it up to me.
But those serious allegations are just not true.
You did not grab her by the wrist. You did not put your hands on her shoulders. You did not push her into a room that you closed the door on. She's lying about that, is what you're saying.
Yes, that is not true.
This is the take this is the framing that some other ladies and men, if you want to call them that, over on the left are taking. Emma Vigeland, again, all of these goofball hyper progressives are saying the exact same thing, the exact same stuff. So for example, Emma Vigeland earlier said, so unless there's something else coming, the big NYT expose is that he was a bad boyfriend to some women, but also a good boyfriend to other women. Kyle Kalinske over from Secular Talk, who's just an absolute hack, said breaking, man is unsettling. This would be the fault of the New York Times for describing domestic abuse. That's what those are from Lindsay Fifield. Those are domestic abuse allegations. It's just unsettling behavior. It is a little telling how many Democrats immediately ran to describe shaking and violently grabbing a woman enough to leave marks, and also, shoving her in a room and holding it, locking it shut, kidnapping by the legal definition. Again, domestic abuse in any call from cops. Unless you're in the UK, then they'd probably arrest the woman for being attacked. We wouldn't say that's not unsettling, that's abuse. Because, we have an IQ over 5. But these individuals don't do that. Oh, they have had the right take, I guess, according to their logic, before. It just changes depending on who the victim is. So you might remember a couple of years ago, she had a totally different take on Christine Blasey Ford, saying, I guess 35, 40 years later, after never having said anything at all ever, she said, if we want to feasibly say this country's learned from its mistakes, the public treatment of Christine Blasey Ford, who alleged that Brett Kavanaugh had raped her, needs to differ wildly from the public treatment of that Anita Hill received. Oh, another interesting. I believe we can do better. See, but when it's someone alleging just domestic abuse, and was very clear, he didn't hit me, this is what he did do. If it's politically motivated, no one's around, then wouldn't Lindsay have said he hit her and he beat her? Nope. Again, very, very suspicious and weird stuff over here from the left. Same thing from a lot of people. Crystal Ball, for example. The New York Times publishing uncorroborated accusations against Graham Platner of unsettling and toxic behavior that came from a Heritage staffer who previously worked for a conservative organization that backs Collins. Here's the thing, though. The New York Times admits they went through a ton, all of the iMessage and Google Message phone records, the texts, and the instant message records that were provided openly and freely by Lindsay to the New York Times. And they said, yeah, it was a highly volatile relationship. Guys, people in DC do date. They are different over periods of time. Again, the New York Times began with a clearly illustrated, they used to date. And by the way, Lindsay Fifield hasn't worked at the Heritage Foundation for a long time, dude. Really desperate right now to try to whitewash the guy you chose. You chose the guy with the Nazi tattoo, the Totenkopf SS tattoo, I should say. You chose the guy who said that he still thinks about getting himself off in porta potties and that he can't otherwise. You chose the guy who said that he thinks it's good that some people were raped, that some people should be raped. In fact, that said he would rape others if they broke into his home as a point of dominance. The guy who admitted that had committed gun crimes in DC, rules for thee, not for me kind of a guy. The same guy who, again, said that he bought cocaine just a couple years ago. I mean, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. The guy on Kick Messenger, a predator paradise. Well, hey. As one comment puts it out, Andy 4C says, yeah, this would be toxic masculinity. I mean, first of all, any kind of domestic abuse of a woman is the furthest thing from masculine, but yeah, this is extremely toxic. Were there a definition of toxic masculinity, this would be it. I mean, and again, this is the guy that they have just ran. This is the extra special stuff. Disgusting. Absolutely spineless. So do I believe that he's going to be sticking around forever? No, I don't. I really don't. I just don't see it here in the future. So I think there may be, one other, case in point here, but moving forward, I highly recommend that if you are reading these kinds of stories, and again, this is where I'm going to pitch the tip sheet over from townhall.com from Matt Vespa. Because the New York Times, it takes 22 paragraphs. As one of my friends points out over on the X side of things, because some of us, know Lindsay. Amber Duke, actually, the editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller, says, quote, the New York Times did a huge disservice to Lindsay in how they packaged the story about Graham Platner, what she describes as physical abuse, and they buried it 22 graphs deep under a headline describing unsettling behavior. And of course, she is correct, and this would come true over the following 3 hours. Platner allies are already dismissing this as a nothing burger. She's correct. This is why I recommend, again, for these kind of things, when they come out, Matt Vespa over at Town Hall does an excellent job of getting right to the meat, right to the matter, brought up an excellent series of tweets, of statements. He says, quote, the less discussed part is that the negative press about Platner mostly comes from the Democrat Party's opposition research. It is only now June, Vespa says. Now we have allegations concerning his past treatment of women that the New York Times described as unsettling. Oh, and not for nothing, but it is also clear that he knew exactly what tattoo he was getting, and as we've said. And then Vespa cites the piece. He says, quote, "It all speaks to integrity, which, sounding trite, is starting to chip away at his numbers." The Democrats have now boxed themselves into defending a man with Nazi tattoos who might also be a serial liar and an emotional, and then this is my parenthetical add-in, a physical, parenthesis, abuser of women. They sure know how to pick them, huh? Very aptly put indeed, Matt. Excellent article again from townhall.com. Highly recommend you go check that one out. So for this evening, again, after a day of being sick and dealing with other kinds of crazy nonsense, what a day and a half. I mean, just, boy, when I say that I don't want to move to Washington, D.C., here is a beautifully laid out example as to why. Now, if my state could actually go after some of the fraud rings and possible immigrant gang violence and scandal in my own state, I'd just be one happy boy. So with that said, I think I'm probably a little too sarcastic and caustic this evening to dive into too much mail time. I will say that this one last thing, there are a couple of questions that have been asked about some, rather inquisitive individuals about the president's pick for the director of intelligence, about some far right, no longer right-wing influencers and their trip to Russia, Afrikaner refugees, various other questions I will answer, and I'll probably take a little extra time tomorrow to do so. I'm not really in the place to answer those this evening, with with two quick exceptions. So number one, there's a very kind $50 super chat from Patrick, who says, Operation Just Cause vet here. Thank you for remembering us. Thank you very much for participating in one of the clearest determinative expressions of the Monroe Doctrine in the 20th century. And God bless each and every one of you. So the second thing there is a question about the giveaway, because there's a giveaway for some Tony Kinnett Cast and Daily Signal merch happening. And I saw a question actually from the original Jersey Jen. And I wanted to address it before we're done here because, I care about how you guys see these things. Maybe I shouldn't so much, but I do. So at tonykinnett.com/giveaway, there is a page where you can enter a giveaway to get some free merch. Now, right now, I do not have an end date for this giveaway because we're still waiting on a few tech issues on the merch side to finish up. I think end of this week is probably when we'll wrap things up, but we're going to pick a handful of individuals, like 3 to 5. We're going to throw them in randomly, and then we're going to give you access to the giveaway. Now, there are a couple of questions on the giveaway. One, you got to put in your name and email so that we know how to contact you. If you don't put in your name and email because you don't want to give us that, well, then we can't contact you to let you know we've won the giveaway. Because we've done that before, and people got salty and said, well, why do you need my email? Well, how am I supposed to get back in touch with you, Chief? So that would be one. Number two, there are two final questions. Number one, are you subscribed to the YouTube channel? Which we can check. We can kind of search via the whole name and email thing. And number two, have you left a review for us over on Apple Podcasts? So the Tony Kinnett Cast has a page on Apple Podcasts, and leaving us a review there helps us oodles, canoodles, and toaster strudels. Now, I know that it's kind of difficult and annoying if you don't have an Apple account. It may not even let you do so. If you select no on the Apple Podcast thing, does that mean we're going to ban you from the giveaway? No, we're not. I just would ask that you at least tell us whether you have or haven't. So that little thing there, that's just a little fun kind of a thing there. Michael Groves, $5 super chat at the end here, says, I'm now a regular listener and supporter. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Says, I missed the show last night. I also missed doing the show last night, although I was sick and in a oversized Matt Walsh, Am I Racist t-shirt on my couch watching like the interview. I've never actually watched any of the Tony Kinnett Cast ever. But, with the audience and stuff, because it was a really cool interview. And I was also somewhat lucid while I was doing it because, again, I was ill. I'm still not feeling super duper great. So I appreciate that many of you look for the show when you're not there. I understand we can't get an announcement out to all of you because there's no way to do that when we're not having a show. But in the description, there's a link to our Discord. And that's where we have a little shows channel that lets you know, hey, there's going to be a show. There's not going to be a show. Or Wow, look at this picture of producer Daniel doing the disco. Yeah, might have to put that up just for you. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We will be back tomorrow. Same great time, same great place, same mediocre sarcasm. The Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.